Welcome to the Strong Starts podcast with your hosts, Jessica Whitehead and Sarah Gerber-Kai.
Hey guys, today we're going to talk a little bit about co-regulation and its role in schools. Sarah, tell us a little bit about what it looks like, sounds like, feels like, and what we should expect when we see people co-regulating.
Well, to start us off, I hesitate to get too specific about what co-regulation looks like and how it's done, just because it's something that we very naturally know how to do and folks have been doing for thousands of years. When I talk about co-regulation, I like to think first about infants and when you're soothing your infant and the way that that feels. So co-regulation is more, I would say, about how it feels than about what it looks like. And what it feels like is being a regulated body, a regulated nervous system for somebody else when their nervous system is dysregulated. And so that's something that you and I experience a lot in our work, but it's something that folks are experiencing all day long with your families, out at the grocery store. We have these moments naturally of this dysregulation that happens. And then, at some point we learn how to self-regulate and kind of self-soothe our own nervous system. But as kids are growing up from infancy into young adulthood, they're needing co-regulation in order to be able to learn that self-regulation.
Yeah, I don't even think people realize when they are co-regulating half the time. And I didn't know exactly what I was doing until I was told, hey, that's co-regulating. And here's some resources on co-regulation and how important it is in our work and education. Ginger Healy came out with a great co-regulation book. We have other books like the Co-Regulation Handbook, a lot of resources right now coming out on the importance of co-regulation.
You mentioned it's something you didn't even know that you were doing. And that's why I hesitate to get too specific or scientific with it, because it is something that we're doing all day long. You think about, you see a child at school who has flipped their lid, they're throwing stuff across the room or screaming at the top of their lungs. And when your body automatically starts to go into a very calm space and trying to regulate yourself, you are co-regulating. You are regulating your own nervous system so that you can be there for another child. Where it starts to get really tricky is when our own nervous system becomes dysregulated because of the dysregulation happening in the room. And then we need to pull out our tools, our tricks to be able to regulate ourselves.
Yeah, I think I have an easier time talking about what co-regulation isn't versus what it is. And I think what it is so tricky. It depends on the moment, the person. But I know when you are co-dysregulating, I guess is the word, is when you're just not able to get yourself together and therefore not able to get someone else together. So if you're dysregulated, you cannot regulate somebody else or help somebody else regulate. And so I think that's easier for me to talk to people about when we're talking about regulation, co-regulation.
Well, 100%. So let's get into it, because there's so much about a school day, about our jobs, about the work that we do that is so dysregulating. And so I think about conveying this information to our teachers, to our systems. And there's so much about the way that the system is set up that is dysregulating. You think about the urgency, the pressures to be able to get so many things done in a day, to get so many different standards covered and make sure, you're moving your kids from math to ELA to, okay, now they have to go to specialist. Okay, lunch is at 12:05. We need to make sure everything's wrapped up by then. All of that urgency and that pressure is dysregulating. It's stressful. It puts stress on the nervous system.
Yeah. And when we're talking about school staff being responsible for, regulating students, because we have kids from age 3 up to age 18, maybe even 19. And during the day, we have to keep them regulated so that they can learn. Because, brain development wise, they're not always able to regulate themselves. And that's normal, right? But I know that's also difficult. It's another demand on the list of demands of teachers. We have so much to teach during the day, and not just teachers, but EAs. Our task list is huge. And, we're already trying to keep ourselves regulated during the day because, let's face it, teachers make 1 million decisions during the day. They're keeping the schedule straight of all these kids and then we have academic demands on where we're supposed to teach, test scores, anything coming from administration. And so it's hard to regulate our own emotions, let alone the emotions of a bunch of, kids.
Well, yes. And you mentioned the brain development. And so, at this point, it used to be that talking about adverse childhood experiences was this new thing. And, everyone was trying to figure out their ACE score and how many different types of those adverse experiences they've had. And now at this point, we know that we can just assume that folks have had these adverse childhood experiences, that there are folks who have been traumatized, brains have been traumatized, or, experienced chronic stress, chronic toxic levels of stress that have heightened or changed our sensitivity to the stress in the environment, becoming dysregulated. And to nobody's fault. That's just how these brains and these little bodies show up to us in our classrooms. And so when you have just the natural dysregulation that's happening throughout the day, but then on top of that, brains that already, because of their development, don't know yet how to regulate. And we can go into that. It takes years of consistent co-regulation for the nervous system to be able to self-regulate. Years. And so they already come to us 4 or 5 years old. If that consistent co-regulation wasn't there, then we can't presume that that body knows how to self-regulate. But then on top of that, you have these experiences of trauma and chronic stress that make the body either more sensitive, so like hypervigilant to any kind of dysregulation in the environment, or less sensitive. So that's where we see like the shutting down and the freezing to dysregulation in the environment. So you have all these factors happening for children, but you also have them happening for adults. We think about like all of the community traumas that we've experienced. And then that's on top of anything that we experience as children. Jessica, I know you do a lot of coaching with other staff members. How do you begin to have those conversations with folks about their own regulation and what their nervous system is needing or how it's experiencing the environment?
Well, and it's definitely tricky. So let's give an example of what this could look like in a school setting. And
Mhm.
this also happens outside of schools. As a parent, I do this with my own children all the time. But in the school setting, it could look like kids in class gets frustrated at their assignment. He starts throwing a pencil, ripping up their assignment, and they're beginning to escalate. And so as a teacher, that's difficult because I'm thinking, okay, I have all these other students in my room trying to learn. I need to get this student regulated, or I need to get support or something for this student. I need to keep the other students regulated. So when one student is having a moment, big feeling happening in the classroom, you're not just thinking of co-regulating with that student. You're realizing that you have to keep yourself regulated so you can co-regulate with everyone in that room. And that's a big task. That's huge. And so that's one instance where co-regulation happens, but we see it in the hallways. We see it in the cafeteria. The cafeteria is so loud. We've got, an entire grade level or 2 or 3 grade levels in that cafeteria all eating. And so this kid is so loud, they start throwing their lunch, maybe they stand on the table. And so now you're not only trying to regulate that student, but you have a whole cafeteria. We see playground. And so it's not unique to just classrooms, special education rooms, reading groups. When we talk to teachers, some things we talk about are our voice, tone, cadence. How are we talking to that student? Are we recognizing our own heart rate? Are we recognizing our own body language? Are we clenching our fists? Are we standing with our knees locked? Are we over the student? Are we next to the student? Are we down at their level? People have made fun of me because I have gotten down on the floor, laying down, trying to get at a student's level before. Are we giving students cues on their own breathing by monitoring our breathing? And so when I'm coaching teachers, it's really about self-awareness. What are we doing? It's not about what the student is doing as much as about what we're doing.
You're right. The first step to being able to co-regulate is recognizing what's happening for ourselves in our bodies, what's being activated, and then being able to regulate ourselves. And that's, like you said, you have a million things you got to think about. Being able to stay present and in your body is tricky. It's challenging. And, just to put it plainly, like the system's not set up to give you those moments. So you have to take those moments for yourself to be able to tune into how you're doing.
Oh, yeah. So I've been there. So you have this moment happening in your classroom. You're struggling to regulate. Maybe something is triggering you. Maybe you're just having like this uncontrollable reaction where, you're breathing heavy and you're just struggling to bring it back down. You're so worried about the other students. But then what, right? Like, who's coming to help you? How are you getting support? Sometimes we don't have a choice. We've been in situations where everything seems to happen at one time. Big behavior is happening and this behavior is happening. And we keep hearing radio calls and there's no one to answer those calls. So then you're that staff member. What now? What do I do? I'm dysregulated. I'm struggling to regulate the students in front of me, but I have no one, to change with me, to, flop with me, or then what? And so that's a big barrier we're seeing is what is set up for, staff members to where we can give that support. We talk about room clears, can we just get the other students who aren't having these big behaviors out? Can we stand in the hallway and separating from that a little bit? Do we have partner teachers? Do we have other staff members that could step in the hallway and supervise? Can we bring students into a partner teacher's room? But all that depends on rational thinking and being able to get through those moments.
Yes. And so best case scenario, I agree. If we can get another space, another person, another regulated body who hasn't just been through this dysregulation with the class, who can help assist and be that spare nervous system that other folks can feed off of, that's wonderful. If we can't, then some quick tips and tricks, just because I like to leave folks with something. When we need to self-regulate, the quickest thing that we need to do is to be able to activate that parasympathetic nervous system. That's that rest and digest. So you have your sympathetic nervous system. That's what helps us do fight, flight, freeze, fawn. That's what gets activated when you're dysregulated. To be able to regulate, you want to get into that rest and digest. So quickest way to do that is by stimulating what's called your vagus nerve. And Peter Levine teaches us a lot of ways to be able to quickly stimulate your vagus nerve without any fancy tools or tricks. And that's a lot of stuff your body already knows how to do. I know like there's a million products that you can buy to help you do this, but your body knows how to do this. So this is swaying back and forth. This is those deep breaths that you take. Humming helps to stimulate your vagus nerve. Peter Levine teaches us, this one's my favorite, Jessica. I don't think I've ever told you this, but the VU breath. So it's the deep breathing, and then you breathe in through your nose, and then you exhale and you make a VU sound. And it gets like you feel your core vibrating, and that's helping to stimulate your vagus nerve. But even something as simple as gentle touch, like a hand over your heart and on your belly, or some gentle, I see you doing this all the time. Give yourself a gentle massage on the arms or around your heart. That all stimulates that vagus nerve to be able to activate your parasympathetic nervous system. So these are things that we can quickly do when we're feeling ourselves dysregulated, but then there are also things that we can help to model for our students or our kids. That's that other part of co-regulation, is being able to model those things for somebody else.
Modeling and teaching this is very important. And I know some people are saying, when do I do this during the day? What time do I have? And I would say, you don't not have the time. Make the time, make it 5 minutes, whatever you do while you're walking in line, whatever you have to add into your day. Also, I think it's important to address the systemic issue behind this. I know the answer isn't more people, right? We can throw as many people as we want into a school to support staff and students, but the answer really isn't more people. It's a better system with what we have. Yeah. And so do we have meetings where we're talking about how we support teachers with these big behaviors? Do we have processes in place for when we have to do a room clear? Do we have systems in place for when we don't have someone who can respond to a classroom? And if you're out there listening and you're thinking, we don't have those, then it's time to start advocating for those, create a committee on your own. I mean, there's been times where I'm like, okay, I need answers. I'm just going to gather some people and we're going to make a system because we don't have it. And so there is a responsibility on administration to have a system, but there's also a responsibility on staff members to advocate or create your own system if you don't have one. So what do you want to happen when these things happen in your room? You're not able to regulate, and behavior is kind of going sideways. Yeah. So I think here's where I think our responsibility lies. Our responsibility lies in ourselves to keep ourselves regulated. Number one, we've got to stay cool, calm, and collected when we can, as best as we can. And there's times where I know it's hard. Like I've had to kind of keep it in, and I'm going on however long, and I'm really working to keep myself regulated, or at least appear regulated on the outside. And it's our responsibility to regulate which students we can, like whoever we can. If Sarah is starting to scream and she's flipping a chair, we still have to stay regulated so that we can help the other students. Okay, we've tried our tricks with Sarah. Sarah is not regulating. In fact, she's getting worse. No one's responding to my radio call. I need to be able to make rational decisions for the other students. Okay, guys, we're going to push in our chairs. We're going to go read in the hallway, right? There's no staff coming to, relieve us for a room clear. I got to get these kids out. So we're going to go in the hallway. We're going to go across the halls to my partner teacher's room, whatever we have to do so that Sarah can have the room. And I know some teachers are probably like cringing because I'm giving Sarah the entire room, but it's true. Like I'm not going to pick her up. I'm not going to put her in a hold, but I'm going to get the students out and I'm going to help them regulate because Sarah might need an alternate location to regulate. She might need a different staff member to come in. She might need something else, a different tool, something I don't have at my disposal in order for her to regulate.
Therefore, your responsibility is to be the regulated body.
Yeah.
Period. That's all you got. In that moment, that's all you got.
Right. And you can't wait for other people to come because that might not happen. You can't for somebody else to come regulate you.
I think I want to be sympathetic to the fact, though, that sometimes people are going to have a bad day. But when you notice for yourself as the adult that this keeps happening and you keep feeling dysregulated, that's when you got to take some ownership and figure something out, because it is part of the job. I don't know. I imagine, though, like in teacher school, Jessica, that it's not told to you that it's part of the job to be the regulated body in the room at all times, but it is part of the job. It's a reality of it.
Yeah, and it's not like it's on the top of our job description. Your skill is keeping yourself regulated. And I agree. If you have your bad days, that's perfectly normal, right? Everyone has their bad moments, the rough mornings. They're not feeling well, but they come to work. I think that's different than continuously struggling to regulate yourself when you're working with a vulnerable population. We're not working with an easy population, but it's the most vulnerable. And we have a responsibility to that population. And we are the ones with control over ourselves. It's not the kids' responsibility to keep themselves regulated 100% of the time because of the developmental factor in that. But it's our responsibility as the adult who hopefully has the prefrontal cortex developed and who has that responsibility to stay regulated.
This is where they talk, they talk about like it could be that one adult that can make a difference in the life of a child. That's also applies to these ideas about regulation. So for whatever reason, if a child didn't have consistent caregivers who were able to provide consistent co-regulation from infancy, it's not like all is lost. There's still time. And as a teacher or as, the EA in the room or the school counselor or whoever, you can be that regulated body that helps to move a child through learning self-regulation. And it sounds like a lot of responsibility. And I can understand if any folks have the instinct, if, your like knee-jerk reaction is to go, that doesn't sound like it's my job. I can understand that. And at the same time, there's I want to invite people in to feel a sense of that accountability, like that responsibility as that adult in the room, to be able to take some ownership of that and know that really it comes down to just being that regulated body. Know the tools that help to regulate your own nervous system, and know that, accept that invitation to be able to be the co-regulator in the room and help your students in that way. It's an incredible impact you can have.
Well, yeah, and we can't keep putting the responsibility on other people to make that happen. So we can say, and Sarah and I will stand up for systems, and we need to have better systems in place in schools. And that's really the foundation of our work. But sometimes the system starts with the educators within that system also. So administrators can provide all the professional development they want. They can give you the resources, they can give you the space, but it really is up to you as the adult to put those things into action. We can only blame other people for so long before we really have to look at ourselves and say, hey, this is my job. I mean, we can say my job is to teach academic skills, but we know that doesn't happen unless students are regulated in a classroom.
Well, and the science is all there. We hear these buzzwords all the time, like having trauma-informed practices, doing brain-based learning, understanding our nervous system. You hear these things all the time, but that's so important, Jessica. Like, how are you actually implementing it? And what does the system look like? And even just on the day-to-day level, do we have a system where administrators, where the folks in charge can see this happening and see this need and relieve some of that pressure? Be able to say, okay, I understand you needed to take that extra 5 minutes with your class to be able to co-regulate, and that's okay. I'm not going to, ding you for that or whatever, because I know that an important part of learning is being able to move your kids through this regulation and dysregulation throughout the day. That's an incredibly important part of learning.
Yeah, and if you're an administrator out there at any level, if you're a teacher, staff member, EA, and you're just like, where do I start? I want to know more about what you're talking about. Where do I start? I tell everyone, and we're not paid to say this, but I tell everyone to pick up Ginger Healy's book. It's less than 100 pages. It doesn't take much time to read. There's lots of pictures and diagrams. So if you want something that's easy and quick and takes little time and gives you a ton of resources, even printable PDFs, just pick up her book. It's great. It's fantastic. That's probably where I tell people it's the easiest way to start. Just being aware of yourself, giving you very quick strategies to implement as soon as you get it. If you're a leader, it really helps you guide staff members as well. So, if you're out there and you're thinking, this is huge, this is a problem, you got to start somewhere.
Yeah. And then I would say, when you've given your staff time and space to be able to read this book, digest it, listen to what comes up, because a lot of times, because of the way that our systems are set up and the way we have to move throughout the day and all the pressures, we get into a space of saying, no, 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 we can't, and shutting down ideas. But this wisdom about our nervous systems, about being regulated, about what it is that our brains and bodies need, it's in us. I mean, it's wired into us. So as hard as it might be sometimes, taking the time to really listen to your staff and listen to what it is that they're saying that they need, and then trying to get creative with it. Like you said, Jessica, the answer isn't going to always be more people. It simply can't be. It can't be more minutes in the day. There are a lot of limitations in our systems, but when we open up our minds to being creative, we also allow for more regulation to be able to happen. I know, like, anytime that I'm in a meeting and ideas are just getting shut down, I start to get very dysregulated myself. And then the creativity can't happen and we can't actually see the changes in our systems.
Yeah. And let's face it, if you're in education, you need some outlets. You need to be able to regulate. You need to be able to come to work and not feel like you're going to have a panic attack. And I can say that because there's been times where I've stepped in a building and it's, I have a physiological reaction to being there because I know what's waiting for me. I know what could happen. And we don't deserve to have that. We've got to be able to regulate. And like you said, have the space to do so, have the resources to do so. And we have, responsibilities within ourselves to make that happen. And we've said it before.
Yeah,
we can't wait
100%.
for other people to make it happen for us. We've got to do it ourselves sometimes.
Yes. Well, and I mean, we could spend an entire episode just talking about how our own dysregulation can be that antecedent to so many different behaviors. And so when we also think about being preventative with our behavior management, this is an important piece to that. And I think that that's something that can also be a way to get some buy-in from your whole system, is understanding that having a regulated body, a regulated nervous system, can help to prevent so many of those behaviors that become challenges later on.
The other argument is the hand that I'm dealt within my classroom is really where I'm struggling. Like, the breakdown in this system is how my classroom is arranged, is managed, is, I get 18, 25 kids, however many kids in your classroom. I've got this percentage on IEPs. I got this percentage with behavior plans. this percentage who are, learning English as a new language. I've got this percentage who, right? And how do you want me to stay regulated? Sure, I have the skills, but everyone has their breaking point at the same time. What do you expect me to do about that when I'm trying to manage all these different needs at one time? Your eye starts twitching a little bit. Your heart rate increases. Do I meet this need, meet this need? Did I give the right resources? Did I provide the right accommodations to the right students? And so on top of that, it is your responsibility to stay regulated with the cards that you're dealt.
Yes. And so to that, I would say, let's talk. If I were in a position of supporting that person, I would say like, hey, let's get a coffee, get a cup of tea. Let's just talk about it, because I think that that's something that's missing too, is the relationship building that happens between adults, so that we can support each other and so that we can help each other to stay regulated. Because, like you talked about entering a building. Well, it's happening all day long. We're passing each other in the halls. Am I rolling my eyes at my coworker passing through the hall and like unintentionally passing on to them some of my stress? Am I talking to people in a stressful way and just adding to that pressure? Or am I, using our relationships to be able to relieve some of that and co-regulate with my colleagues? So yes, I would say the pressure's real. There's no doubt in my mind that this is a hard ask, that this is a big ask. You mentioned all those different things, and then you compound that with, we got 6 periods in a day, and that classroom makeup is changing 6 times in a day. Holy cow. I don't know how you guys do it. I really don't. So the pressure is very real, but at the same time, there's still the responsibility. So let's talk about it.
Yeah, and in a previous episode, I think it might even just be the last one or the one before, they're kind of running together. But we've talked about find your person, and in your building, in your role, and what we do, we need to have a person, at least one, that we can come to when we're stressed, and that will just get, yeah, you have this need. Let's talk about it. What can we do to support someone that you can help you advocate, or, be on your side when you are advocating? And that's also important in our jobs.
And so with that, we appreciate you all listening. We're going to put Ginger Healy's book, a link to her book, in the show notes of this episode. And if you are interested in learning more, feel free to reach out to us on social media. We are at Strong Starts Podcast on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. We would love to start connecting with folks and be able to talk through with you some of the nitty-gritty of these topics and how they play out, but then also be able to support you and your systems in staying regulated and giving us opportunities to be able to co-regulate. So thank you all for listening. Until next time, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and we will talk to you all later. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.